if we're planning for something, we can start to identify resources and move them as you're going along rather than wait until you're in a hole and you have to make a big cut. And so it's like when you're driving your car, it's much better to see something in the distance and know you're going to have to avoid it and start making the little incremental changes rather than wait until the last second and swerving dramatically and dangerously sometimes. So
That was Catherine Wehlberg, president of Athens State University and author of the book Academic Master Planning, Guiding Strategic Innovation for Academic Leadership. We had a wonderful conversation filled with fruitful analogies like the driving one you just heard. And Catherine's book is kind of like an analogy. It's all about planning for your academic programs as you would your campus. Rather than an if you build it, they will come, hope as a strategy kind of approach, you're creating the long-term vision, identifying the priorities, phasing things for incremental progress, and adjusting along the way based on ongoing feedback from students and families, faculty and staff, industry and community. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Connected College podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Felix. I've helped more than 100 colleges and universities change what they offer, how they operate, and how they're organized to enable student success. And if you're a leader in higher ed and you think that the silos and separations get in the way of student success, then this podcast and my book, The Connected College, are for you. We're here to learn and work together to bust silos, question tradition, and forge partnerships so that students feel connected to their college, their community, their coursework, and their careers.
Welcome, Catherine. I'm so excited about our conversation on academic master planning.
well, thank you so much. I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, as a recovered architect who now works on strategy, the idea of marrying these two concepts of a master plan and your academic plan and academic programs is so exciting to me. So let's dive in. And I think a great way to start would be hearing how you got started in higher ed and what you're up to today.
I have been in higher ed for a ridiculously long amount of time at this point in my life. So over 30 years. And I have been on the academic side. So I was a faculty member and kind of came up through the ranks in leadership. I came to Athens State as the provost and vice president for academic affairs and looked at the ways that our academic portfolio was put together. And we had some things that were old, that weren't really best practice, and also some great, wonderful, new, exciting programs coming along and some very, very solid programs. But one of the things that was happening was in the middle of the budget year, suddenly I would get a request for a new faculty line. And, oh, don't you remember when we talked about this? We needed this new line or oh, all of our equipment in the lab needs to be replaced. And we knew this when we bought it 10 years ago or whatever. So these surprising things kept coming up, and we weren't really having the conversations about what direction is any particular program going into that was in any kind of systematic way. And so, I had been through the facilities master planning processes at several different institutions, and it's great because, well, first we have to buy that land, and then we have to take that down the properties that are on that land, and then we have to raise the money, and then we can start building. You don't just go, oh, let's build this. Who knew we had to do all these steps before that? And so I thought, well, why don't we do the same kind of thing with our academic programs so that we can be very intentional and put things in a time frame. And then as a dean or a provost, how great would it be to have all of these time frames kind of spread out, because you can't necessarily do everything at the same time. And then you can start to prioritize to say, okay, our nursing program's really growing and it's a big need. We're going to prioritize that. But this other program in chemistry is really important, but we're not going to do that line now, but we are going to do it in 2 years. And anyway, that way everybody kind of knows what the time frame is, what they're looking at, and what has to happen first. So that if something doesn't happen, then everybody knows it's going to delay whatever those next steps are. but it leaves enough fluidity in it so that you can have something new, in the same way that with a facilities master plan, when suddenly you get a gift for something, you're like, well, we were going to wait on this, but now we're going to move it up in the priority list because we now have funding for it. So I was looking around to see, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of books on strategic planning. There's so many of them, and many of them are fabulous. But I was like, I don't really want strategic planning, even though this is a strategic planning process. I want something focused on master planning for academic programs. And there wasn't really anything out there. So I put something in place, and we started down that path here at Athens State. And I thought, if I'm looking for this, I bet other people are too. And so that was why I ended up writing the book.
I love that story. And how do you avoid the jumping to let's build this resonates so much with me, because I feel like Field of Dreams, the if you build it, they will come,
Yeah.
makes for a great story, but doesn't make for a great campus or curriculum. And being intentional and determining the steps and the phasing and the prioritization that you're mentioning, I think is so critical, because people sometimes they jump right to the solution without defining the problem they're trying to solve, without, understanding what students, employers, society need, and how the programs are fulfilling those needs. I love the analogy that it is like this master plan for your academic programs. How does that master plan tie into student success? How does having an academic master plan help students succeed?
Well, I think what it does is helps to provide academic programs that meet what students will need in the future, because it's a very future-focused planning process. My background is psychology. So in a psychology department, there are many different branches, and you've got social psychology, you've got educational psychology, you've got counseling psychology, you've got neuropsychology, and they're all related, but still different enough that that distinction is really important. And many small colleges don't have the staffing or the facilities or the student interest in all of the areas. And so institutions and programs need to start making some decisions. Okay, this is where we're going to focus. We're going to focus on counseling and clinical and social psychology, but we're not going to go into neuropsychology. And that's a very strategic decision to make. And so if you're going to do that, you are making decisions about who you're going to hire, what lab stuff you need, what your curriculum is going to look like, and the student population that you're going to be going after. And so you have to have that sense of mission and vision in your program to help with those priorities. Every academic program is like that. But you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And that is something that is really important for programs to think about. So helping faculty have the conversations that they need to be having about their priorities and their vision is what will help them have the stronger tracks in the programs that will help students and that will be able to give them the focus on student success. It can also help with the overall budgeting process, because you're looking at multiple year budgets. And then it helps with, if you're going to go out and get donor support for some of these things or scholarships for some of these areas, it gives time to build the curriculum and make sure that it's in place. But it also gives faculty and alumni and current students the ability to, and the time to kind of look at what do we have and what is really important to us, what makes us distinctive. Why should a student come to this institution in this particular program when there's 4,000 other programs out there? What makes us distinctive? And then how do we really focus in on that distinctiveness to make sure that we are truly meeting what the student needs now and what they are going to be needing in the future as they're going out?
That just makes so much sense, that you're aligning programs where there's demand as a kind of a bottom line, and you're doing it in a way that provides distinction and differentiation. So Catherine, we've been talking about this sort of analogy of an academic master plan, and it's helping you look out into the future and being intentional and understanding the prerequisites, the steps, the phasing, the priorities. How do people create one?
Well, sure. When I kind of put this together, I wanted it to be able to be done in an academic year. And so there are basically 5 phases to walk through with academic master planning. And the first phase just being understanding what it is and what it's not, that it's not an attempt to cut programs. It's not the same thing as the program review that we do. It is really a planning process to engage other people with. Then the second phase focuses on identifying, creating, and getting everybody kind of on board with the mission and the vision of the department or the program so that everyone's talking about the same kind of thing. The third phase gets into developing core principles, which of course build on the mission and the vision, but what are the signature elements of a department program? What is it that is absolutely fundamental to what that does, to what that program does, and what makes it different? From those core principles, they can move into the fourth phase, which is creating very specific initiatives for each of the core principles. So, for example, if one of the signature elements of a department is active internships that really get the student engaged in something, or a capstone course where they're doing substantive research or whatever it is. So then how do we make sure that we have this? So it might be, if internships is the core principle, the specific initiative might be identifying current and future internship placements and that kind of thing. And then once you have those specific initiatives, that fifth phase is identifying timeline and resources. So that timeline and resources list can then be taken by the dean or the provost, where you can look across programs to make sure that you don't have too many things happening in that same year, and align all of that so that we can do this. One of the things that higher education has done very badly, at least at many smaller institutions, is we come up with a great idea, but we don't fund it sufficiently. And we don't fund it sufficiently,
Right.
not as successful. So this is with this, putting those resources in, if we're going to do this, we are going to need this. And until we get that, we can't move forward.
And I wonder, I feel like higher ed is so good at adding, right? Like there's a new need, we add stuff, as a result. I think campuses have grown at twice the pace of enrollment in the last 20 years. I think staffing has grown at about 6 times the enrollment over the last 40 years. So we have this wonderful tradition of adding to adapt. But it sounds like as part of academic master planning, what you really need to do is take a hard look in order to align the programs with the demand and do the academic program reviews and do the sunsetting. Like, what's your secret sauce for subtraction and getting folks to stop doing things, not just keep starting them?
Well, and I don't know that there is any secret sauce to
Darn.
that.
I was hoping for a magic wand or something.
I don't believe there is a magic wand, but there is the idea of doing things, taking smaller steps to get there rather than waiting until you have to take huge steps to get there. So if we're planning for something, we can start to identify resources and move them as you're going along, rather than wait until you're in a hole and you have to make a big cut. And so it's like when you're driving your car, it's much better to see something in the distance and know you're going to have to avoid it and start making the little incremental changes rather than wait until the last second and swerving dramatically and dangerously sometimes. So part of this idea and this plan is that if it's done right, if it's done smoothly, there aren't going to be any major cuts. There will be tweaks along the way that will identify how that program needs to grow or change or adapt to what's happening. So computer science is a great example. If we were still teaching computer science the way we were teaching it 20 years ago, no one would come because computer science has changed as a field drastically. But knowing, okay, this is changing. Okay, this coding language is gone. Nobody uses that anymore, so let's not teach it. let's teach this new one, or let's now use this new way of doing things. And so if we can do it as we're moving along, rather than waiting until it's a crisis, we're going to be a much smoother and healthier institution.
Yeah, the driving analogy is a great one. If it's in the distance, you can just make a slight adjustment to change lanes instead of swerving. And I like small changes instead of big cuts that are dramatic and difficult.
Similar to deferred maintenance. If you wait until deferred maintenance is a real problem and the roof is falling off, whereas you could have made smaller, less expensive, timely fixes so that you don't get into that situation where you have a real problem on your hands.
What are some of your success stories putting academic master planning into place at Athens State?
So one of the things that has been, I think, most helpful about that process is in engaging with faculty about the value of their program, because faculty in general value their discipline in their program, and that's why they went into it. And they believe, and I think this is a good thing, that their program is truly the most important program that we offer at our university. And that is great. But it also has helped some of them really have the conversations about why is my program so good, so important, something that is really truly worth investing in, because we're not just teaching courses in a vacuum. Every academic program is truly a program of study. And when we stop looking at this is my class and I'm going to teach my class the way I've always taught my class and no one else can teach my class, and we instead talk about the program, the curriculum that students will be going through, now we can really look across all of these things, and that will impact how we assess our programs, which will help support the accreditation process in many ways. And we can do it in a way that those conversations happen. And then that helps the dean understand the differences among all of their academic programs so that they can also start advocating for those programs. Those conversations have been some of the most crucial ones that we have been having. To give you a specific example, and this is the result of several things, not just academic master planning, but looking at industry needs, community needs, growth in areas. At Athens State University, we have an RN to BSN program, and our RN to BSN program is very successful. It's also a very new program for us, but it has grown exponentially over the last few years. And we are now looking at adding an MSN program on top of that. So how we plan that out and how that is going to work from a hiring and a staffing position to we've got specialized accreditation and we've got substantive change with our institutional accreditation. All of those things need to happen. We've got to start talking about that now so that we're all involved and engaged in that process so that there are fewer surprises about that.
So because you're doing this regular process and you're making small tweaks and you're thinking ahead and you're prioritizing and reprioritizing, it just creates an ongoing conversation about the programs with the faculty and contributes and leverages that sense of ownership.
And that is certainly the goal. And as anybody listening who's been in higher education for more than a minute knows, there are so many important and sometimes not so important discussions and conversations that are happening on our campuses. Some of that comes from within, some of that comes externally in terms of state or federal changes that are happening. And sometimes those can take the focus away from student success and what we are doing for our students. And that focus on programmatic mission helps us as an institution keep focused on our institutional mission and what we are really doing.
And given that this is like an ongoing kind of thing, right, where you're doing the pruning, the alignment, the adjusting, the tweaking, the innovating, what's changing about how people create these academic master plans? Help us see around corners a little bit as they're trying to understand what students, employers, society need, and how that matches up with curriculum and courses and more.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that it has allowed us to do is identify where we have barriers in the system. Higher ed has a lot of barriers, and some of them are very necessary and meaningful, and some of them are not. And so one of the things that we have looked at is what is the time frame to get a new course through the curriculum committee? And when we are making substantive changes to a program, what is that time frame, and where are those barriers, and how can we remove some of those? So we've implemented a new software that we're using to manage curriculum so that our academic catalog is updated relatively automatically, which takes it out of the old-fashioned way of saving all the changes and then going in and editing a document to make sure nothing gets missed, and something always would get missed. So we have updated the curriculum approval process using technology to help support that, which takes some of the time that was necessary before on faculty who were on the curriculum committee and that kind of thing, and certainly makes the life of our registrar a little bit more smooth in that particular way. So that has been, I think, one of the things that this process has done, is given us a chance to see where those barriers are and really talk about them. Why is that so important? I was kind of hoping that when we go into this, that we'd be able to say we can get a new program approved within a year. It's a great idea. Let's just do it. We got the courses, we got the faculty, done. Well, there's all kinds of other elements, making sure that advisors were prepared for that. And how do we let our state coordinating board know? And so clarifying what those look like has been something that's been helpful with this.
And so the technology has helped you keep pace and kind of automate some of the approvals and alignments. And what are the drivers for change that you need to align to, right? As you look down the road, right, to use your analogy, what are the adjustments that you're seeing or other folks might be seeing that they can make now to avoid swerving later?
Yeah.
I just love that analogy, so I'm going to keep using it.
Well, I'm glad. Please do. So let me take a step back. And so Athens State University is over 200 years old. We were actually founded in 1822. And the institution started as a women's college and has morphed into several things over the last 200 plus years. And where we are now is we are actually an upper division institution. So we bring in transfer students. So we do not enroll first-time, full-time freshmen. We enroll transfer students and adult learners. And so having a focus on kind of career-connected education is something that's really important to us. So each college has an advisory board, and some of our programs have programmatic advisory boards. And what that does is give feedback from community industry leaders about what is needed. We also have started about 3 years ago a learning partnership program. And with our learning partnership program, we actually make connection to a company and industry, and we offer them a tuition discount for their employees and the employees' families. And we also have access then to their expertise. Sometimes that turns into a new person to come be on one of their advisory boards. Sometimes that is internship connections. And we are also then able to go in regularly and have conversations with that particular industry about what do you need? What educationally, can we help provide for you? So with those learning partnerships, we are creating new pathways for information to come to us about what our industry needs. And we're also able to talk to industry about what we are offering and what we might be able to offer to help them be successful and support what they're doing. Athens State University is in Athens, Alabama, which in the North Alabama area is growing dramatically. We have Huntsville, which is the space and rocket kind of center of so much of what's happening. And the growth that we are seeing in industry needs is pretty significant. Part of our job is to help prepare students for jobs that haven't been, identified and created yet. So being able to have access to these adult learners or potential adult learners to help make sure that they are prepared for whatever this next step is means we have to have that open line of communication. And so those advisory boards, those learning partnerships really give us a lot of insight into what is needed now and what is probably going to be needed in the future.
So it sounds like the best way to kind of see around corners and to align programs with employer, student, societal needs, since ultimately that's how academic master planning is enabling student success, is to be sort of in constant communication and collaboration, whether it's through a learning partner program, whether through advisory boards. What have been some of the aha moments from these conversations where you've learned about a new growth area or rockets or otherwise?
Yeah, no.
Always great to create rocket scientists.
Rocket scientists are great and we need them, but we also need plant managers. And we have a lot in the North Alabama area. We have a lot of automotive industry and robotics and plant and parts and pieces plants that are making a single piece that is going to go into vehicles across the world. And one of the absolute most incredible parts of my job, and I do actually believe I have the best job in the world, because I get to go visit these plants and see things that I have no idea about how that works or why that works that way. And I get to go see it. I went to and visit a plant that is works with iron and creating iron and melting and smelting and all this kind of thing. Absolutely amazing. And so one of the things that has been this kind of aha moment is that in an automotive plant, you don't just need people to make cars. You need managers. You need HR personnel.
Absolutely.
You need accountants. And so we don't have to provide everything. We can look to our strengths and provide that to the best of our ability and make sure that when a student leaves here in education, they're going to be a teacher, or a student leaves here and they're going to go into logistics, that they are as well trained and prepared as they can possibly be. But we don't have to know every piece of it, because no one knows every piece of it.
Right. You just have to know how you fit in, and then you have to recognize there's all these wraparound functions, enabling functions around manufacturing or whatever it might be that actually make things work and are in demand.
Right.
So it's talking to employers, it's visiting them, it's meeting with them on advisory boards. I think these are all great strategies. So, Catherine, earlier you said you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And to me, that speaks to this whole point of distinction and differentiation. And if you read the headlines, it's as if every university is doing the same thing. But in fact, there's a lot of diversity. And I would love to hear your take on how folks can find their differentiation, how they can understand what makes them distinctive, and how they can fit in as opposed to trying to be everything to everyone.
And I think that is such a key perspective. I heard somebody say last week that higher ed in this country is being viewed through the lens of about 10 institutions.
Yeah.
That we are not all the same, and we do different things, and that's great. I mean, I think that's our superpower, is that not every institution is like every other institution. And I think that part of what we have to do as an institution is figure out, we don't have to be like the institution 2 towns down the road. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't be, because then why do we have 2 institutions that close to each other? How do we find our special sauce? What is it that makes us important and viable, in all honesty? And I think that is something that's really important. The big state flagships are going to be strong. They're going to do great things. I'm a product of one of them. I think that's wonderful. I think our Ivy League institutions are going to continue, and that is great. I've worked at some of them, and it's fabulous and wonderful. But there's also a really, really important piece that those types of institutions are not necessarily hitting. And a lot of that gives us the flexibility to be nimble, to be able to say, okay, yes, we're gonna do this because there's a need for this right now. And there may not be the need down the road, but there's a need right now. And so I think that as we look at what higher education is doing and how higher education is changing, and in some ways how higher education is under attack in many different ways by people who don't fully understand the value, all of that says to me that we have done a terrible job of explaining the value of higher education. And we can't explain it very well if we don't know what our own value is as an institution. And so the whole idea of master planning is in being able to say, this is what Athens State is. This is what we do. This is why this is so very important and crucial to our community, however we define our community. We've got to be able to figure out, why are we important? Because if we can't say that, how can people know?
Right. You got to know your value to communicate your
Right.
value, and then to be able to be valuable. I think it just makes so much sense. And my shorthand for this is, I feel like for so long, we've been stuck on this idea of regional comprehensives. And I actually, I think we need regional specifics.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need
Yes.
where, to your point, there's this need right now, and how do we work together to meet it? And here in Minnesota, more broadly, a month or so ago, there was, in the same day in the Star Tribune, one state college was really facing some steep budget issues and looking at things like getting rid of tenure and some drastic measures. And then University of Minnesota Rochester enrollment was up 80%.
Mm-hmm.
And one was trying to be all things to all people, and the other was like, we're in Rochester, Minnesota. We eat, dream, and sleep healthcare.
Yep.
And we're laser focused on that. And that's where there's, to your point, like there's a need right now. So I think figuring out your value, your distinction, and then communicating it and then delivering on it is so terrific. And I really appreciate your perspective. And I hope folks check out your book on academic master planning from Springer. It's a great resource. And I've really enjoyed today's conversation.
Well, thank you so very much. I have as well. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to the Connected College podcast. Subscribe to my Connected College newsletter at elliottfelix.com for insights and excerpts from my book, tools you can download, and special offers. You can also find more information about talks I've given, articles I've written, and upcoming events there. And please support the podcast by rating and reviewing it wherever you're listening. Let's create connected colleges where students will succeed.